This woman, her name is Rebecca, walked away from her husband and 5 children 25 years ago for another man. Today, at 54 years old, she's sitting alone in her apartment, genuinely confused about why her family refuses to acknowledge her existence. She sends anniversary wishes to her ex-husband. She shares parenting memes with him on social media. She asks for old family photos, and every single time she's met with complete silence. But here's what makes this story truly haunting. She still doesn't understand what she did wrong. I'm Emma, and today I'm bringing you a story that will challenge everything you think you know about accountability, self-awareness, and the long-lasting consequences of our choices. Let me take you back 25 years. Rebecca was 29 years old, married to a man named Marcus, and drowning in what she describes as a suffocating life. 5 children, ranging in age from 3 to 11, filled every corner of their home with noise, needs, and endless demands. On the surface, it looked like a typical suburban family, but Rebecca felt something entirely different. She felt invisible, forgotten. Like a ghost who simply kept the household running while everyone else lived their actual lives. Marcus worked constantly. Early mornings that started before sunrise, late evenings that stretched past dinner time, and when he finally came home, he'd collapse into his favorite chair with a drink in hand, offering nothing more than grunts and nods to Rebecca's attempts at conversation. Rebecca managed everything else. Every doctor's appointment, every school event, every grocery run, every meal, every homework session, every scraped knee, every nightmare, every single detail that keeps a family of 7 functioning. And what did she receive in return? In her words, a husband who acted like her presence was something to simply expect, not appreciate. The romance that once existed between them had faded somewhere around child number 3 or 4. Marcus stopped noticing when she changed her hair. He forgot her birthday more often than he remembered it. He stopped looking at her as a woman and started treating her like just another piece of furniture in their home. Rebecca began to feel like she was disappearing, piece by piece, day by day, until she barely recognized the woman staring back at her in the mirror each morning. That's when she decided to take a part-time job. Not for the money, though that helped, but for her sanity, for adult conversation, for the chance to be seen as something more than just mom or Marcus's wife. And that's where she met Daniel. Daniel worked nearby, and from their very first interaction, something was different. He asked about her day and actually waited for a real answer. He noticed the small things, a new hairstyle, a different shade of lipstick, the weariness in her voice on particularly difficult days. He made her laugh in a way she hadn't laughed in years. For the first time in what felt like forever, Rebecca felt like an actual person. Not a caretaker, not a household manager, but a woman with thoughts, feelings, dreams, and a personality that existed beyond her roles as wife and mother. The texts started innocently enough. How was your day? Hope you're doing okay. Just wanted to make you smile. But Rebecca found herself checking her phone constantly, smiling at messages the way teenagers do when they're experiencing their first crush. She started looking forward to work more than coming home. At work, she was Rebecca. Funny, interesting, vibrant Rebecca. At home, she was simply the person who made sure everyone else's needs were met, while her own were completely ignored. What began as friendly conversation gradually transformed into something much deeper. The emotional connection came first. Long talks during breaks, extended conversations after work, shared secrets and dreams that Rebecca had stopped sharing with Marcus years ago because he'd stopped listening. Then came the lies, small ones at first. I need to run to the grocery store. I have an errand across town. The traffic was terrible. Each deception came easier than the last, partly because Marcus barely seemed to notice anyway. Rebecca and Daniel would meet at a quiet diner outside of town where nobody knew them. For those stolen hours, she felt alive again. When she shared her frustrations about feeling trapped and unappreciated, Daniel looked at her like he wanted to rescue her from everything weighing her down. It was intoxicating to be the center of someone's attention again. The physical relationship evolved slowly. A hand resting on her shoulder. Sitting closer than necessary. Hugs that lasted just a moment too long. And when they finally crossed that final boundary, Rebecca felt something she describes as coming back to life after years of feeling dead inside. She became skilled at covering her tracks, immediate showers upon returning home, deleted text messages, elaborate stories using the children as alibis, and Marcus, so disconnected from the family's daily rhythm, never questioned any of it. The guilt that society tells you should be crushing in these moments? Rebecca didn't feel it. In her mind, Marcus had emotionally abandoned their marriage long before she found someone who actually valued her presence in his life. When Marcus eventually started noticing changes in her mood and asking questions, Rebecca turned every inquiry back on him. "Oh, now you suddenly care about my day? Where was this interest for the past decade?" She became expert at making him feel guilty for even questioning her behavior. Everything shattered the night Marcus went through her phone while she was in the shower. Rebecca emerged to find him sitting on their bed, holding her phone, his face displaying an expression she'd never seen before. But instead of shame or regret, Rebecca's first emotion was pure anger. How dare he invade her privacy? How dare he go through her personal messages without permission? She demanded he give her phone back, as if he were the one who had done something wrong. Marcus just stared at her like he was looking at a complete stranger. And perhaps he was finally seeing her clearly for the first time in years, just not in the way she'd always wanted. He started reading the messages aloud, his voice shaking with each intimate detail. Rebecca found herself annoyed that he was making such a dramatic scene over this. In her mind, he'd driven her to this through years of neglect and emotional absence. "You want to know why this happened?" she shot back. "Because you stopped being a husband years ago. You ignored me for a decade, and now you want to act shocked that someone else gave me what you refused to provide." Tears came then, not from guilt, but from frustration that her carefully constructed new life was falling apart. She tried to make Marcus understand that this was his fault, that his neglect had pushed her into Daniel's arms. The manipulation flowed naturally. She promised to end things with Daniel. She swore it had been just an emotional mistake. She begged for another chance. But even as the words left her mouth, she was already planning how to contact Daniel safely again. Marcus agreed to couples therapy, desperate to save their marriage and keep their family intact. But Rebecca saw these sessions as opportunities to build her case against him. She painted vivid pictures of years spent feeling neglected and invisible. She described the loneliness of being married to someone who treated her like hired help rather than a partner. The therapist nodded sympathetically as Rebecca positioned herself as a woman pushed to the absolute breaking point. Marcus would try to defend himself, but Rebecca had already controlled the narrative. He was the distant, workaholic husband. She was the lonely, desperate wife driven to seek comfort elsewhere. Behind the scenes, the affair with Daniel continued. The therapy appointments actually provided perfect alibis. She'd leave early or return late, telling Marcus she needed time to process what they'd discussed. In reality, she was with the man who made her feel truly alive. During this time, Rebecca began planning her exit. She researched apartments, she calculated finances, and most importantly, she convinced herself that leaving wouldn't truly harm the children. After all, they'd still have Marcus. And honestly, she thought he'd probably be a better father without her there anyway. The day Rebecca finally left, she felt an incredible rush of freedom. She'd spent weeks preparing, finding an apartment near Daniel's place, slowly moving her important belongings when Marcus was at work. The children were at school when she packed the last of her things. This timing was intentional. She didn't want to deal with their emotional reactions and dramatic pleas for her to stay. When Marcus came home that evening, he found a note explaining that Rebecca was choosing to prioritize her own happiness for once in her life. By then, she was already settled into her new place with Daniel, free to become the woman she believed she was meant to be. The note mentioned needing space to discover who she was outside of being just a wife and mother. She vaguely suggested that maybe someday they could work things out, but truthfully, she was just keeping her options open. The children called that first night, crying and begging her to come home, but Rebecca felt she needed to stay strong. They were young and couldn't understand that sometimes adults must make difficult choices for their own well-being. She explained that mommy needed to be happy to be a good mommy, and that she'd see them soon once everyone adjusted. She wasn't abandoning them, she reasoned. She just needed time to focus on herself and her relationship with Daniel. Marcus called repeatedly, leaving desperate voicemails asking her to reconsider and think about the children. But Rebecca wondered, where was all this emotion and desperation when she was drowning in their dead marriage? Now that she was gone, suddenly he wanted to fight for her. In her mind, it was far too late. Living with Daniel felt like finally coming home. They'd stay awake talking until dawn, something she and Marcus hadn't done in years. Daniel would bring her flowers randomly. He'd cook dinner after her long days. He actually wanted to hear her thoughts and feelings about everything. This, Rebecca thought, was what a real relationship looked like. Two people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company and prioritized their connection above everything else. When the divorce papers arrived, Rebecca was shocked by how cold and businesslike they appeared. Marcus was requesting full custody and offering her virtually nothing in terms of assets or support. Clearly, he was trying to punish her for choosing her own happiness, but Rebecca wasn't going to let his vindictive behavior drag her down. She signed everything quickly, ready to start fresh without the baggage from her old life weighing her down. The custody arrangement seemed perfect to her. The children would stay with Marcus during weekdays since he'd always been more of the disciplinarian anyway. She'd see them on weekends when she felt ready for that responsibility again. This gave her time to build her new life with Daniel while remaining available to the children when they truly needed their mother. Everyone was getting what they needed, she reasoned. Marcus got to play the martyr single father. The kids got stability. And she got freedom. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Daniel sat Rebecca down with news that completely blindsided her. He'd been having second thoughts about their future together. He felt maybe they'd moved too fast. He'd met someone else, someone without the complications of 5 children and an ex-husband. He thought it would be better if they took a break to figure things out. A break. After she'd given up everything for him, Rebecca was devastated. More than that, she was furious. How could he do this to her? She'd left her entire life behind, her children, her home, her stability. And now he was just walking away like none of it mattered. The betrayal felt even worse than anything Marcus had ever done, because at least Marcus had been honest about his disconnect. Daniel had made her believe she was special, that what they shared was worth every sacrifice she'd made. But instead of falling apart completely, Rebecca decided to prove she could make it on her own. She found her own apartment, secured a different job, and started rebuilding from scratch. It was much harder than she'd expected. The children would call sometimes, usually when they were upset about something at school or fighting with Marcus. These conversations exhausted her. They'd want her to come back and fix everything, not understanding that their father was perfectly capable of handling their problems. Dating after Daniel proved to be a nightmare. Men her age either had their own complicated divorces or had never been married and weren't interested in someone with 5 children, even if those children primarily lived with their father. The few relationships she managed to start always crumbled when men realized how complicated her family situation was. Most people couldn't understand why a mother would choose to live separately from her children, no matter how she explained it. Financially, things became tight quickly. The apartment was expensive, and without Marcus's income to rely on, she had to take whatever work she could find. The child support she was supposed to pay seemed impossible given how little she was earning. But Marcus kept pressuring her about it, as if she were deliberately trying to hurt the kids. After a couple years of struggling alone, Rebecca met someone named Craig at a downtown bar. He wasn't particularly stable. He had problems with alcohol and couldn't maintain steady employment. But he was charming and made her laugh when she needed it most. When Craig suggested they move in together to split expenses, it seemed practical. Rebecca wasn't looking for another grand romance. She just wanted someone who appreciated her company and could help make life a little easier financially. Rebecca and Craig lasted about 5 years before his drinking spiraled completely out of control, forcing her to choose between enabling his addiction or saving herself. By then, she'd barely spoken to the children in months. Every conversation turned into them guilt-tripping her about missing their important events or not being around enough. Marcus had remarried, some woman who apparently attended every soccer game and school play, making Rebecca look even worse by comparison. She was certain this was intentional on Marcus's part. Fast forward to now. Rebecca is 54 years old, recently divorced again after Craig's drinking led to financial disaster and bankruptcy. She's been doing a lot of thinking about her life. The children are all adults now with their own lives. Watching their social media posts, Rebecca realizes how much she's missed. Graduations, relationships, career achievements, major life milestones. Not that anyone bothered to keep her updated about these events, but apparently she's supposed to have psychically known when important things were happening. A few months ago, feeling nostalgic around what would have been her and Marcus's anniversary, Rebecca found herself wondering if he ever thought about the good times they shared before everything fell apart. So she sent him a message on social media, just a simple, happy anniversary, thinking that after all these years, they could at least be friendly. He didn't respond. That hurt more than she expected. Then she started sending him parenting memes, the kind about raising daughters since they had 3 girls together, just trying to reconnect on some level. After all, they share 5 children together. Surely there would be some common ground there. Again, nothing. Complete radio silence, as if she doesn't even exist. It's like Marcus is determined to pretend their entire history together never happened, which strikes Rebecca as incredibly immature. She's tried reaching out to the children too, but those conversations never go well. They act like she's some stranger who has no right to be interested in their lives, when she's literally their mother. Yes, she made choices they didn't understand when they were young, but they're adults now. Rebecca thinks they should be able to see past their childhood hurt and appreciate that she was just trying to find happiness after years of being miserable. Last week, she finally got Marcus's phone number and texted him asking for copies of their old family photos and wedding pictures. She doesn't have any of those memories anymore after all the moves and chaos of the past 25 years. She thought maybe he'd understand that those pictures mean something to her too. But apparently, even that simple request is too much to ask, because once again, no response. What really gets to Rebecca is how everyone acts like she's the villain in this story, like she's supposed to feel guilty forever for choosing her own happiness over staying in a dead marriage. Marcus moved on. He remarried. From what she can see on social media, he seems perfectly content with his new life. The children have grown up and started their own families. Everyone got what they wanted in the end. So why can't they just let the past be the past? Rebecca isn't asking for forgiveness or to turn back time. She's just trying to figure out why a simple conversation or acknowledgement of their shared history is so impossible. They're all adults here. They have 5 children together who have given Marcus grandchildren that Rebecca has never even met. She thinks there should be some maturity and willingness to at least be civil after all these years. But apparently, holding grudges is more important than moving forward like grown-ups. Maybe she should have handled things differently back then. Been more patient. Tried harder to work things out. But she can't change the past. All she can do now is try to build some kind of relationship with her family. But it's pretty clear that nobody is interested in giving her that chance. So Rebecca supposes she'll just have to accept that some people prefer to stay bitter and resentful, rather than embrace the possibility of healing and moving forward together. And there you have it. A woman who genuinely cannot understand why the family she abandoned 25 years ago refuses to welcome her back with open arms. What Rebecca may never grasp is this: wounds don't heal simply because time passes. They heal when there's genuine accountability, sincere remorse, and real understanding of the pain that was caused. Her ex-husband doesn't respond to her messages because he's not holding a grudge. He's protecting his peace. He rebuilt his life after she destroyed their family. He raised 5 children primarily alone, while she was living with the man she left them for. He attended every game, every recital, every parent-teacher conference by himself. He dried tears and answered questions about why mommy left. He created stability out of the chaos she created. Her children don't want a relationship because they're not bitter. They're protecting themselves. They learned at young ages that their mother prioritized her happiness over their well-being. They watched their father struggle while their mother was starting fresh with someone new. They lived the consequences of her choices every single day. Rebecca wants old family photos without acknowledging that she discarded those memories when she walked out the door. She wants access to grandchildren she's never met without recognizing why her own children won't grant that access. She wants civility without ever offering genuine apology. What makes this story particularly haunting isn't just what Rebecca did 25 years ago. It's her complete inability, even now, to understand the magnitude of her actions and their lasting impact. She reframed every selfish choice as justified self-care. She repositioned every betrayal as necessary survival. She reconstructed every abandonment as brave independence. And 25 years later, she sits alone, genuinely puzzled about why her family has chosen to move forward without her. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt, not because others refuse to forgive, but because the person who lit the match never truly understood what they destroyed. Thank you for listening to this story here on Mrs. Emma's channel. If this story made you think, feel, or see things from a different perspective, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss stories that explore the complex, messy, real consequences of our choices. Remember, understanding doesn't always mean agreement, but listening to all perspectives, even the uncomfortable ones, helps us grow. I'm Emma, and I'll see you in the next story.